How much does every British WW2 tank cost? Today, from nimble cruisers to heavily armoured infantry tanks, every British armoured vehicle tells a story of engineering ambition and battlefield adaptation. And each one carries a price tag that reflects its survival against 7 decades of scrapyard gravity. Let's begin with the light tanks and early cruisers that defined British armoured doctrine before combat reality intervened. Light Tank Mark VI. The Light Tank Mark VI equipped British armoured regiments at war's outbreak, mounting only machine guns against German panzers. Today's survivors command £180,000 due to extreme rarity. Fewer than 5 exist worldwide. Light Tank Mark VII Tetrarch. The Tetrarch promised airborne deployment capability but delivered fragile suspension and inadequate armour on Russian fronts. Collectors pay £220,000 for this elegant failure because only 3 remain in private hands. Cruiser Mark the Fun. The cruiser Mark the Fun introduced Britain's 2-tank doctrine with its multi-turret layout and modest 2-pounder gun. Museum pieces occasionally reach auction at £150,000 despite questionable mechanical reliability. Cruiser Mark II. The Cruiser Mark II added armour thickness to the A9 chassis but remained underpowered and cramped. Restoration projects start at £80,000, though complete running examples double that figure instantly. Cruiser Mark III. The Cruiser Mark III brought Christie Suspension's revolutionary speed to British service with copied American designs. Market value sits at £190,000 because collectors prize its mechanical innovation. Cruiser Mark IV. The Cruiser Mark IV improved frontal armour over the A13, but kept the troublesome Liberty engine. Surviving examples fetch £160,000 at specialist armour auctions. Covenanter. The Covenanter never left British shores due to catastrophic cooling system failures in its cramped engine bay. Training-only service history depresses prices to £110,000 despite operational rarity. Crusader. The Crusader became the Desert War's British workhorse despite persistent overheating and mechanical fragility under sand. Running examples command £140,000 because North African veterans carry premium collector appeal. Cavalier. The Cavalier rushed into production as a stopgap design, proving so unreliable it never saw combat operations. Prices hover around £90,000 for static displays with compromised historical significance. Centaur. The Centaur compromised with Liberty engines when Meteors remained scarce, serving primarily as training vehicles. Market value reaches £130,000 for complete examples. Cromwell. The Cromwell finally delivered reliable speed and firepower with its Meteor engine and welded construction throughout production. Collectors pay £200,000 for Britain's first truly successful cruiser tank design. Challenger. The Challenger mounted the formidable 17-pounder on a lengthened Cromwell chassis, but suffered top-heavy handling. Rarity pushes prices to £250,000 despite only 200 being built. Comet. The Comet represented the pinnacle of British cruiser development with its powerful gun and improved armour scheme. Today's market demands £300,000 for this late-war masterpiece that hints at post-war Centurion excellence. But cruiser philosophy couldn't match the battlefield reputation or collector premiums commanded by Britain's heavily armoured infantry tanks. Next up are the heavily armoured infantry tanks, the thick-skinned legends that justified Britain's 2-tank doctrine, and today command premium prices reflecting their battlefield mystique. Matilda I. The Matilda I entered service as Britain's first proper infantry tank, mounting only machine guns behind thick armour. Collectors pay £130,000 for surviving examples of this pre-war relic. Matilda II. The Matilda II earned its Queen of the Desert title by shrugging off German anti-tank rounds at Arras and North Africa. Today's market demands £280,000 because its combat legend outweighs mechanical complexity. Valentine. The Valentine became Britain's most produced tank with 8,275 units built, serving from desert sand to Russian snow. Common production history drops prices to £120,000, despite global service records. Churchill Mark III. The Churchill Mark I introduced Britain's heaviest infantry tank with its distinctive hull howitzer and thick armour plate. Early variants fetched £220,000 at auction houses specialising in armoured vehicles. Churchill Mark III. The Churchill Mark III replaced the hull howitzer with a proper 6-pounder turret gun for improved anti-tank capability. Collectors pay £240,000 for this combat-proven North African and Italian veteran. Churchill Mark IV. The Churchill Mark IV switched to welded turret construction while maintaining the reliable 6-pounder armament throughout production. Market value sits at £230,000 for mechanically sound examples. Churchill Mark VI. The Churchill Mark VI mounted the 75mm gun for better high-explosive performance against infantry and fortifications. Running examples command £260,000 because fewer than 8 survive worldwide. Churchill Mark VII. The Churchill Mark VII delivered the thickest armour of any British tank with 152mm frontal protection on its hull. Today's prices reach £350,000 for this ultimate infantry tank evolution. Churchill AVRE. The Churchill AVRE mounted the devastating petard spigot mortar for bunker-busting operations on D-Day beaches. Specialised engineer variants fetch £400,000 because only 3 remain in private collections. Churchill Crocodile. The Churchill Crocodile terrorised German defenders with its flamethrower reaching 80 yards from armoured carrier trailers. Flame variants command £500,000 as the rarest and most dramatic Churchill survivors. Churchill ARK. The Churchill ARK sacrificed its turret to become a mobile bridge for crossing obstacles under fire. Conversion rarity pushes prices to £320,000 despite purely supporting role. Churchill AVRA. The Churchill AVRA carried fascines and demolition charges for specialised obstacle clearance throughout northwest Europe. Working examples reach £380,000 at military vehicle auctions. Black Prince. The Black Prince prototype mounted the 17-pounder gun on a widened Churchill chassis, but arrived too late. Theoretical value exceeds £750,000, though the sole survivor belongs to Bovington Museum. But Britain didn't fight alone. American Lend-Lease tanks filled critical gaps, and their prices reflect transatlantic collector competition. Next up are the American Lend-Lease tanks that equipped British armoured divisions alongside specialised variants that turned battlefield weaknesses into tactical advantages. M3 Stuart. The M3 Stuart earned its British nickname Honey for reliable mechanical performance despite light armour and puny 37mm gun. Collectors pay £90,000 for these nimble reconnaissance veterans that survived where heavier tanks bogged down. M3 Grant. The M3 Grant mounted its sponson gun hull design awkwardly, but provided desperately needed firepower during dark North African days. Market value reaches £130,000 because British variants carried modified turrets, distinguishing them from American Lees. Sherman M4A1. The Sherman M4A1 featured cast hull construction that British crews preferred for shell deflection characteristics over welded variants. Today's prices sit at £150,000 for running examples without specialised British modifications. Sherman M4A2. The Sherman M4A2 used diesel engines that British logistics favoured over gasoline variants throughout European campaigns. Collectors pay £160,000 because diesel Shermans remained rarer in American service, but common in British units. Sherman M4A4. The Sherman M4A4 stretched its hull to accommodate the Chrysler multibank engine's unusual 5-engine configuration. Mechanical complexity depresses values to £120,000 despite distinctive elongated appearance. Sherman Firefly. The Sherman Firefly mounted Britain's devastating 17-pounder gun in a modified turret for tiger-killing capability at long range. Premium pricing reaches £350,000 because British conversions command twice standard Sherman values through battlefield legend alone. Sherman DD. The Sherman DD deployed flotation screens and propellers for amphibious assault across Channel waters on D-Day morning. Specialised variants fetch £320,000 as surviving Hobart's Funnies examples grow scarcer each decade. Sherman Crab. The Sherman Crab spun its flail chains to detonate mines ahead of advancing infantry through Normandy hedgerows. Mine-clearing variants command £360,000 because fewer than 6 remain in private hands worldwide. M10 Wolverine. The M10 Wolverine served British tank destroyer units with its open-topped turret and reliable 3-inch gun. American-built examples cost £110,000 in today's market for original configuration survivors. M10 Achilles. The M10 Achilles converted American hulls with British 17-pounder guns for superior armour penetration performance throughout Northwest Europe. Conversion rarity pushes prices to £240,000 over standard Wolverines, despite shared chassis. Tortoise. The Tortoise Super Heavy assault tank mounted 32-pounder guns behind 225mm armour, but arrived after German surrender. Prototype status makes valuation theoretical at £500,000, though museum ownership prevents private sales. But the supporting cast, carriers, self-propelled guns and armoured cars kept British operations moving, often at fractions of tank prices despite using identical chassis. Next up are the tank destroyers, self-propelled guns, and carriers that supported armoured operations, vehicles that often cost less than premium tanks despite sharing identical mechanical complexity and battlefield importance. Archer. The Archer mounted its 17-pounder gun, facing rearward on a Valentine chassis for quick shoot and scoot ambush tactics. Awkward layout limits, collector appeal to £130,000 despite formidable anti-tank capability. Deacon. The Deacon improvised a 6-pounder gun onto a wheeled AEC truck chassis for emergency North African tank destroyer service. Extreme rarity pushes theoretical value to £170,000, though only one survives at Bovington. Bishop. The Bishop carried a 25-pounder field gun in a tall, boxy superstructure that restricted elevation and tactical flexibility. Ungainly appearance depresses prices to £90,000 despite important North African fire support role. Sexton. The Sexton mounted 25-pounder guns on Canadian-built Ram chassis for mobile artillery support throughout Northwest European campaigns. Commonwealth production history justifies £140,000 for running examples at military auctions. Priest. The Priest delivered American 105mm firepower that British crews nicknamed after its pulpit-like machine gun mounting. Lend-Lease variants fetch £120,000 because American collectors compete for same surviving vehicles. Universal Carrier. Mark I, the Universal Carrier. Mark I became Britain's most produced armoured vehicle, with 113,000 built for infantry support worldwide. Mass production obliterates scarcity premium. Runners cost just £50,000 despite ubiquitous wartime service. Universal Carrier. Mark II. The Universal Carrier. Mark II simplified production with improved engine access and standardized components across manufacturers. Market value hovers at £45,000 because dozens survive in collections globally. Wasp. The Wasp converted standard carriers with flamethrowers for close-quarters bunker assault throughout European campaigns. Specialized equipment raises prices to £75,000 over baseline carrier values despite shared mechanical components. Lloyd Carrier. The Lloyd carrier provided towing capacity for 6-pounder anti-tank guns and supply transport behind armoured units. Utilitarian service history limits appeal to £35,000 for complete, restorable examples. Daimler armoured car. The Daimler armoured car mounted a 2-pounder turret on excellent cross-country suspension for reconnaissance deep behind lines. Collector favourite status commands £110,000 because only 15 remain privately owned. Humber armoured car. The Humber armoured car served as Britain's reconnaissance workhorse with reliable mechanics and adequate armour protection. Common survival rate drops prices to £70,000 for running examples at European military shows. AEC armoured car. The AEC armoured car delivered heavy firepower with 75mm guns on a wheeled platform for aggressive scouting operations. Size and firepower justify £95,000 despite limited production numbers. Daimler Dingo. The Daimler Dingo charmed crews with compact dimensions and four-wheel steering that enabled tight manoeuvres under fire. Small garage footprint keeps demand strong at £65,000 among private collectors. Humber Scout car. The Humber Scout car provided open-topped reconnaissance at lower cost than fully armoured alternatives throughout Mediterranean campaigns. Exposure vulnerability limits values to £40,000 for restored running condition. Marmon Harrington armoured car. The Marmon Harrington brought South African production to British Commonwealth forces with distinctive four-wheel drive capability. Colonial origin depresses prices to £55,000 despite capable desert performance. From £30,000 carriers to £500,000 crocodiles, Britain's armoured legacy spans extraordinary price ranges. But even affordable survivors represent mechanical complexity and historical weight that transcends mere monetary value.